All right, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachak Wadash. Double honors to the other apostles and other bishops of Great Millstone, who rule very well, very beautifully. Double salutations to the Akim out here pushing this gospel in truth and in sincerity to the best of their ability given to them by Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. Peace, blessings, and salutations be unto the elect scattered abroad. May the election of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Lord willing, fall upon their houses. This is Brother Corner Watt from the Arizona Great Millstone Camp. Come back at you, Lord will, with the edifying lesson through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Lord will. It is edifying, Lord will. It is straight to the point. You know, in this lesson, I ultimately want to touch on this article that I had seen earlier. It's on the naturalnews.com. It says Israel proposes plan to screen Gaza aid recipients using facial recognition technology, man. And this right here, right, is a precursor, right, to the MO to the TB, right, which is the RFID micro C hip, right, being implemented, man. Right, this is a step in that direction, right, which is prophecy, right, which we're going to get into. But before I even get into this article, I do want to grab this right here. Let's grab this real quick. This is Habakkuk chapter 2 and verse 1. It says, I will stand upon my watch and set me upon the tower and will watch to see what he will say unto me and what I shall answer when I am reproved. Right, man? Right? And the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai ultimately set up prophets, right, that are to constantly be on their watch, right? Watching the news, right? Alternative news, right? Again, right? Really just, scopeing, right? All these different events that are happening right in the earth, and again, taking that information and filtering it through the scriptures, giving it to, those who truly believe, man. Those are the only ones that are really going to see it, but nonetheless pushing this word out to the world, right? Pushing that warning out to the world, right? As we read in Ezekiel 3 and 17, right? To give them warning from Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, right? So we're to watch, gather up the information, filter it through the scriptures and give that information, right, to the world, right? And those who are to receive it will receive it, which we know that's the elect of the nation of Israel, started with the prophets, right? Verse 2, it says, and Yahweh answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain upon tables that he may run that readeth it, right? Make it so you understand, right? And here's the point, verse 3, it says, for the vision is yet for an appointed time. And when you go into that word vision, it goes into prophecy, right? It says, for the prophecy is yet for an appointed time. And Jacob's trouble, right? And the peak of Jacob's trouble, which is going to be the mandatory implementation of, right, the RFID micro C hip, is right around the corner, man. Right? That chaos, the sedition among men, Esau coming in like a flood, apparitions being seen, teeth of wild beasts, all these different, and Leviathan, all these different, events taking place in the one, which we know is Jacob's trouble, right? A time like no other is literally around the corner, man. We understand that Jacob's trouble has to happen before World War III, and World War III is as close as it's ever been. World War III has already started, right? But we know that, again, until Jacob's trouble, pops off, right, the use of ICBM nuclear missiles can't take place, man. So we really are waiting, on one major prophecy before the last couple dominoes, hit, man. So reading about this, as we're going to get into this article, this is one step closer, right, to the mandatory implementation of the RFID micro C hip, man, which is the mark of the beast, right? It says, for the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. And it's speaking, right? You're going to understand that, right, as we get into this article, right? It says, though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry. That's right. Right, so I want to get into this article real quick. Let's go. Right here. Naturalnews.com. Israel proposes plan to screen Gaza aid recipients using facial recognition technology. Right, scroll past these bullet points. Right, it says the United States and Israel have announced a new plan to allow limited humanitarian aid into Gaza. Right, limited. Right, meaning they're not going to give out all of the aid, right? They're going to restrict, who gets what, right? It says contingent on the use of biometric facial recognition technology to screen recipients, right? Following weeks of a near total blockade that had pushed the enclave toward famine, right? So again, here you see these people, right, being put into a situation, right, where they're not able to get food, man. They're not able to, get water. They're in a state of desperation, right? They need a solution to the issue. And see, this is how these damn devils move, right? Order out of chaos, right? They ultimately, or if that's the proper term, man, controlled opposition, I don't know if that's the proper term for that, but basically what they're doing, is again, creating and restricting the people, which is really a war tactic, man. They're siphoning the food and water right to the people, and it's ultimately going to put people in a position, right, to of desperation. And what's going to happen? People are going to riot, right? People are going to again, sedition is going to break out, which is what's going to take place right here soon, right? We read in 2nd Ezra it's like the 15th chapter, right, verses 15 to 19. We're in the time of that scripture coming to pass, man. Matter of fact, let's grab it real quick, man, right, just to show you, because you best believe that this is happening, right, even over there, right? People are hungry, they're desperate, and a lot of infighting is taking place, right? This is 2nd Ezra 15, starting at verse 15. It's like in verse 16, it says, "For there shall be sedition among men, and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power." So because of lack of food, because of lack of bread, right, they're just saying, fuck it, man. Wherever I can find food is wherever I'm finding food, man. And that might be happening on an extremely low scale over there, but when Jacob's trouble pops off, man, this is going to be happening on extremely heightened scales, man. It says, "A man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able." And you see, right, the state of the city, where when you read, different, watch different movies, right? World War Z, I was watching that, I want to say last week or a couple weeks ago, right? There's a movie I constantly remember, man. I haven't been able to find it again, but, I've been able to find the trailer for it, but it's called the American Blackout, I think it's on that IMD TV or something like that, but I can't find it, man. But Lord will, those who are listening, man, y'all can probably find it and check it out, man. But yeah, it shows you the chaos that's going to happen in the city, so everybody, going, hey, stay away from the city, man. And on top of that, man, you're going to have what? Military, blockades, military, what do you call those, man? Stations, as we, approach those times, you're going to start to see this, man. Military being used more. Shit, America the last few years have been getting the people ready, right, and prepared, for that, man. Having the National Guard being used everywhere, the people are getting used to that military presence, But see, it's going to be even heavier in the time of Jacob's trouble, right? It says, "For because of their pride, the city shall be troubled, the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid," right? That's Jacob's trouble, man, And that's all I want to grab on now. I want to get back to that article, because this is what is going to, happen right in the near future. Again, what we're looking at right now, right, is just a precursor or an experiment, if you will, right, to what is ultimately going to unfold, right? It says, paragraph 2, it says, during President Donald Trump's recent visit to Arab allies in the Gulf, Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar publicly endorsed the 14-page proposal brokered under U.S. pressure. The move follows intense diplomatic efforts by Trump administration, which has urged Israel to ease restrictions while maintaining pressure on Hamas. It says right here, a lot of this is ultimately going into that, humanitarian aid. I just ultimately want to touch on, the point of them using, right, that facial technology, right? It says President has made it very clear that one of the most urgent things that needs to happen is humanitarian aid into Gaza. And we understand that these damsels, right, he'll sit there and say, we need to get them aid. We need to get them aid, No, actually, he's more worried about, that plan that, that they have set up, right? Getting that set up in place first, right? And then whoever, they deem worthy to receive aid is going to receive aid, right? That's they want that control, right? That's what Esau wants, right? He believes himself, to be the Most High, right? You even heard, you've all know Noah Harari as well as Klaus Schwab and many others, right, have basically said that there's no need for God, that they are gods, This is the mentality of these damn devils, man. You read that in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 4, right? And he makes that sentiment, I think, in Isaiah the 14th chapter as well, And Isaiah the 47th chapter, right? Sit as a queen and shall see no sorrow, That's how these damn devils are. That's their mindset, man, But we know that, hey, they're fucking devils, man. Right beneath that little smile and all this, we got to get them aid. No, man. It's them. He's a facade in himself, right? It says, and he has tasked all his team to do everything possible to accelerate that and to as expeditiously as possible get humanitarian aid in to the people, right? Which again, right, Revelations 12 and 12, right? Because he knoweth he hath but a short time, right? This is why he's trying to speed everything up, It says the proposal would initially provide prepackaged food, hygiene kits, and medical supplies to only 60% of the Gaza's 2.1 million residents, which, with distribution managed by a newly formed Swiss charity, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Instead of using the existing network of around 400 United Nations distributing points, only 4 aid centers will be established in a southern safe zone controlled by Israeli forces, where displaced Palestinians must relocate to receive assistance, right? So they want to have that control, right? And this situation is leading to further prophecy, right, of the nations hating, on America, right? And the small hats even more, man, right? Because now you're trying to keep them out of the loop, man, But let's keep reading. It says, however, this plan hinges on facial recognition technology to screen civilians and verify identities, a measure Israel claims will prevent Hamas members from accessing aid, right? So it's going to, those who are considered to be against society, right, their order, right, it's going to deny them aid. And see, this is what's coming as well, right? This is going to also lead into, the persecution, man, right? Scripture saying in St. John the 15th chapter, matter of fact, let's grab that real quick. St. John chapter 15 and verse 20, it says, remember the word, this is the words of Yahushua, right? It says, remember the word that I said unto you, the servant is not greater than his Lord. If they have persecuted me, they will also persecute you. If they have kept my saying, they will keep yours also, right? So that persecution is going to come, right? Because, because we're not willing to bow down to their system, right? We're not willing to, go with the flow. Hey, they're gonna ultimately, hem up some of us, man, and throw us into these FEMA camps, right, or these prisons, right, which they're, ultimately trying to, open up the doors to, to get, right, the illegal immigrants and even the homeborn ones, man, right, as Trump said, man, right, openly, on the news, the homeborn ones, man, which he was talking about, us Israelites, right, because we're in a time where he's going to try to make war, right, with the remnant of our seed, as we read in Revelations, the 12th chapter, man, which is talking about the Israelites, that's who his whole, target is the Israelites, man. He don't give a fuck about nobody else, So a best believe, right, that persecution is going to come, man. You know, just, you know, it says it says it says it will enable aid to go directly to the people. Hamas must not be allowed to get their hands on it. Sa'ar said in a separate announcement on May 11th, Israeli soldiers will not allocate aid. They will secure the perimeter. That's right, man. But again, I'm going to get into that Revelations, right, the 13th chapter, you know, because this is heavy, man. Right, again, we're in the time where, you know, Esau is going to, you know, make that, you know, RFID micro CHIP, right, mandatory, right, in order to, again, participate in society or even receive, right, any kind of basic human essentials, right, food, water, right. Revelations 13 and verse 16, it says, and he causeth all, right, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a MARK in their right hand or in their foreheads, you know, which again we go into, you know, the Neuralink, right, the brain CHIP, the Starlink, if I'm not mistaken. I know Apple's saying that they want to, you know, ultimately come out with, you know, a hand CHIP, right, to give to the people, right, to be able, you know, operate their phone and whatnot without having their phone on them. You know, they got the smart glasses and shit. You know, we're in a digital society, a digital age. You know, and he wants to be able to connect everybody to the IoT, which is the Internet of Things. He's going to do it via the RFID micro CHIPs, man. You know, and you're going to need it in order to, again, participate in society. Because remember, everything's digital. You know, as it says, verse 17, and that no man might buy or sell save he that had the MARK or the name of the beast or the number of his name. So you're going to need it. That's the position that Esau is ultimately going to be putting, you know, the people in. You know? Salah, right? He's going to be putting the people in that position. And those who do not comply, right, those who do not, you know, are not going to bow down to the system, right, are ultimately going to be, you know, excommunicated, right, as we jump up, right, and verse 15, it says, and he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed, right. So because we're not going to, you know, go, you know, and take that charagma, right, because we're not going to sit here and act like the rest of these people, you know. We're gonna follow after the law, statutes, commandments of Yahweh B'Shem Yahshua to the best of our abilities, man, you know. And we're gonna, you know, as you know, you read in the Maccabees, right, they chose rather to what, right, they chose rather to die than to you know, give in to the heathens. I'm talking about those 7 sons in 2 Maccabees, the 7th chapter. You know, they chose rather to die than to bow down to, you know, the heathens and their gods, man. You know, that's the mindset that we have to be in, especially coming into these times, right? Because as we see that, you know, Esau, you know, establishing this digital infrastructure, right? As we see the different laws and legislation being put in place, which will make it easy and justified for Esau, you know, to come in like a flood, right? We have to remember one thing, right? There's only one plan, and that plan is to trust and believe in Yahweh B'Shem Yahshua, and the Lord will get us, man. And of course, right, as you know, starting with the elder apostles on down, man, we understand through the scriptures, the spirit of power Yahweh B'Shem Yahshua, you know, that that there are going to be some that are going to be, you know, hemmed up, right, and be you know, beheaded, right, for the name of Yahushua and the testimony, man, right, as we read in Revelations 20 and verse 4, it says, and I saw thrones, and they sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them, and I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Yahushua and for the word of the Most High, which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither had received his MARK upon their foreheads or in their hands, and they lived and reigned with Hamashiach 1,000 years, which, the elders, right, ultimately, reiterated that this is talking about the first 1,000 years, in the kingdom, right? And we understand that the kingdom of Yahweh Shem Shai is going to be an everlasting kingdom, right? So that 1,000 years is not the length of the rulership of the kingdom, right? This is ultimately that first 1,000 years, of the kingdom, is what that's talking about, man, right? But the point being, right, that those that were beheaded, right, because there are going to be some, right, as we, see that this situation is going to lead to the persecution as well, right? We understand that some men are going to be beheaded, and killed for the name of Yahweh Shem El Shah, which is a great and high honor, man. Precious is, in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints, right? As you read in, in the Psalms, man. So that's ultimately a honorable way to go out, but scriptures also say that, that most of us, right, are not going to be put to death, man, right? They shall not taste of death, But either way, man, Yahweh Shem El Shah has got our back, all the way through it, man. Because what does it say right here? In the Revelations, the 2nd chapter, right? As for those that get, hemmed up, right? It says, fear none of those things which thou shalt suffer, right? We're not supposed to fear, right? We're not supposed to fear what man can do to us, right? But what Yahweh Shem El Shai can do to us in our body, right? In hell, right? As the scriptures say, right? Roughly paraphrasing, man. So at the end of the day, Esau can only hurt this body, man. That's it, right? It says, behold, the devil shall cast some of you into prison, right? Into these FEMA camps, right? It says that ye may be tried, right? Tried meaning you being tested, your faith being tested, right? It says, and ye shall have tribulation 10 days, right? That 10 is a number of completion. It could be 2 months, 2-3 months, right? We don't necessarily know, man, but we have to prepare our minds, right? For whether it be a short period or a long period, Scripture say, you know in part, you prophesy in part, man. We just, we know more about the things that have already happened, as the Elder Apostle Remab has stated, man, some years back, right? We know more about the things that have already happened because they've already happened. We have all the information, but the things that are coming, right, we can only say so much on, right? And just, hope and pray through the Spirit and power Yahweh Shem El Shai that we're prepared for what's coming, right? It says, and ye shall have tribulation 10 days, be thou faithful unto death, right? So as long as we stay faithful, man, whether Yahweh Shem El Shai delivers from the situation or the Lord, deliver us into their hands, to be killed, as long as we remain faithful, man, it will be a part of the elect, right? The elect are the ones that are going to remain faithful to the end, right? And see, that's the goal, right? Is to be, a part of the elect, right? One of the requirements, right? A major requirement, if not the requirement, of all the requirements, is to remain faithful to Yahweh Shem El Shah all the way into the end. He that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. It says what? And I will give thee a crown of life, man. The Lord is going to ultimately, give us that everlasting life, these new bodies, and everything that comes with it, man. Because we remain faithful, man. Because we stood stiff for the name of Yahweh Shem El Shah, right? Those new bodies, everlasting life, as well as, right, for us men, receiving that crown from the hand of Yahweh Shah himself, man. We read that in 2nd Ezra, the 2nd chapter, right, beginning at the 38th verse, on down. That's the marriage supper of the Lamb. That's the celebration we want to be a part of, man. So as we see these things, coming abroad, as we see these things, being, built before our eyes, right? The prophecy of Jacob's trouble, the prophecy of World War III. Hey, we gotta again, continue to remain faithful to Yahweh Shem El Shai and understand and believe that He gonna get us through those things. When we say He will deliver us from the snare of the fowler and from the noisome pestilence, that's Psalms 91. Right, go and read that prayer, man. And make that prayer. But I didn't want to, I don't want to make this too long, man. Again, right? It was more of a, MOT, update, man. But kind of just through the Spirit, man. I didn't really have anything planned, just kind of grabbed it and, went through the spirit, man. So Lord will was edifying. Lord will straight to the point. I want to give all praise, honor, glory to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rachak, Badash, the belongs to the elder apostles, the elder bishops, the great millstone. Till next time I say shalom.